Here we have a review of the DASIN model Yusuke Urameshi. So taking a look at the packaging, we do have a nice view of the figure, as well as his name there on the front, Yusuke. Other than that, pretty plain. Nothing on the side. Yu on the back for Yu Hakusho. Nothing on the other side. Legal on the bottom, and then nothing on the top. So not a whole lot going on with this box.
And now to review the accessories. So on the left we do have the DASIN Yusuke, and on the right we have the One Shot Toys Spirit Detective, aka Yusuke. I won't be doing a full review for the One Shot Toys. I have a separate figure review for that, which I'll link to in the description, but I will be doing a comparison so you have a sense of the differences between the two lines. Starting with the DASIN on the left, we do have the wooden floor stand base versus the Yusuke head stand base for One Shot Toys. Now, I do like the One Shot Toys base. I think it's unique to the character. It's very stylized, very cool that they put the extra thought and extra touch into that. For the DASIN, this is the same stand base they've used for pretty much all of their recent releases. It's nice that if you have several of the DASIN figures, you can combine it to make a large wooden floor scene, but it's not really specific to Yusuke or Yu Hakusho, so I would lean towards the one that you get with One Shot Toys. You do have two stand arms with both. The DASIN does have a shorter one and a longer one, where the One Shot they're both long. You do have two stand arms here with the DASIN versus the one stand arm on the One Shot Toys. For the blast effect, we do have a very small, I would say, dinky spirit gun effect here versus the much larger effect that you get with the One Shot Toys. I do like the look of the DASIN better. I like the translucent plastic. I think it looks cleaner. Not a huge fan of the frosting on the One Shot Toys, but just looking at them from their silhouettes, the One Shot Toys is much nicer. It looks like he's actually doing some damage, versus this is more of a sputter. So overall, I would say the One Shot Toys version is better. You do have the briefcase with both models. Looking closer at the DASIN, you do have some very nice detailing, and the paint looks very clean on the lock and the buckles there. You do get our friend Pooh with both models, although there's a very clear size discrepancy between the two. The DASIN one looks very small, very tiny in comparison to the One Shot Toys, which seems to be, I guess, a bit of a running theme, because you have the very tiny blast effect and you have the very tiny Pooh. But again, on the DASIN, I do like the appearance of it better. I think the color scheme looks more natural. The royal blue that you have with the One Shot Toys just stands out and doesn't look right. So the paint here on the DASIN looks better, but size-wise, I think this actually fits better on his head. And just to see what that looks like, get a little bit of a preview here. Putting that on top of his head. It's pretty small because you have to imagine he's also going to have his hair. I'm not sure which is more show accurate, but it just feels tiny. Now for our faces, we do have 3 alternate faces with the DASIN. So we have the yelling face, and the detailing and the paint app all looks very nice and very clean on this. You have a bit of a smirking face here, smirking and looking to the side. And a gritted teeth face. So again, the detailing and the paint looks very clean on all of those. You only get the 2 alternate faces with the One Shot Toys, but in terms of comparing them, so I should compare these. The detailing and paint looks nice on the One Shot Toys. I did have an issue with one of the hair pieces falling out and I had to super glue it, which isn't noticeable. But the eyes, I think, is the big difference between the two. You have the very big, almost bug eyes here on the One Shot Toys, which doesn't look bad. I think it works. But the smaller eyes on the DASIN are more subtle, and I like those. So between the two faces, I think the DASIN wins out. Overall, I think it just looks nicer. And you get 3 of the alternate faces. Well, for the hands, right off the bat, you can see this is it looks very plasticky. So you can see it shining in the light there. Versus the one-shot toys, it's more of a matte finish. So it looks a lot better. So just the application on the one-shot looks better, but you do get more hand accessories with the DASIN. So we have 5 alternate hands with the DASIN or 5 pairs of alternate hands versus the 4 pairs of alternate hands with the one-shot. I don't think that's a huge deal because you're probably not going to use all of these hands anyways, but just going through them. So we do have a pair of the spirit gun hands, which doesn't really make sense if I'm being honest, because Yusuke always does the spirit gun with his right hand, which is this one. So having it for the left doesn't make sense. He never does that. I guess you could use it for something else like pointing, but it's not really a necessary accessory to include. One Shot was quite aware of that, and so they only give you the one for the right hand. Really no need for the left-hand version of it. You do have a pair of gripping hands, which you can use for the briefcase. You also have a gripping hand, just the one though, for the one shot. You have a pair of sort of open palmed hand, or open cupping hand. You have sort of a martial arts grip, pair of those, which you do have with the one shot as well. I just don't have it here because it's actually on my figure. And then you have a pair of the open hand, which you get with the one shot as well. You also have the fisted pair, which is on the DASIN figure, which you get the fisted pair there as well. So the differences between the two are you have this pair of open hands, which you don't have here. And on the one shot, you have sort of a hand straight down. So that's the big difference. And then for the extra pair, that really comes down to the extra spirit gun hand, which is unnecessary, and having 2 of the briefcase hands. So really, you do get more hands technically with the DASIN, but the 2 extras that you get aren't really necessary. And then also in the one-shot toys, you do have an extra pair of feet. So you can swap out the feet on the one-shot toys, change his shoes and give him a barefoot look, which is a nice touch. So overall, comparing between the two, I'd say I like the stand of the one-shot better. I like the faces of the DASIN better. Briefcase is the same. I like the blast effect of the one-shot better. I'm going to lean towards the DASIN for Pooh just because the paint looks better. And then the hands and the feet, one shot definitely wins there.
And now to review the figure. So we'll be doing a comparison against the one shot momentarily, but I first want to take a look at the paint and the articulation of the DASIN model. So bringing it in closer, we do have quite a bit of nice detailing here in the hair. Nice sculpt work. You have the shine line there on the front of the hair, which I guess depending on your preference. For me, I think that's a little bit too strong. I prefer that to be a bit more subtle. Stands out quite a bit, but again, it's really up to preference for that. The faceplate, again, as we mentioned during the accessories, very nice detailing there. Looks very clean. The clothes, it's a standard uniform. Does open with magnets in there. We have the belt and the undershirt. And the shoes, we do have a bit of detailing with the laces there as well. All of the stitching here on the clothing does look very clean. Looks nicely done. Now for our articulation, our head can look forward quite a bit. Does have a little bit of a weird gap when you look down that far, but from the front you can get, whoops, and he fell apart. Let's put him back together. I'm not sure if that was just the way it was originally put on there, if it was me moving it in that direction, or if I have a loose. Seems better now. Yeah, so it does give you a little bit of a gap there, but from the front, it's not noticeable. In terms of looking back, you can look back about that far. Good side range. Nice neck roll. So overall good on the head and neck there. For our arm, you can lift about 90. You can go straight up. Can't do the full 360 because the clothing gets knotted, but the arm does have that full range of motion. Do have a bicep swivel hidden in there. See, for the elbow, you can go a little bit more than 90. Then the rotate and swivel at the wrist. Do we? Yeah, we have butterfly joints hidden under there too. So you can get a nice across the chest motion as well, which is very nice. For our torso, you can do a nice lean to the side, other side. And very nice ab crunch there. Look down at his toes. Really nice on the way back. It's Matrix almost. Have a little bit of a twist there at the waist. Not a whole lot, a little bit. For our legs, can lift not quite 90, and that's because he's getting caught up in the crotch. It's tight there. It's not because of the figure. The figure can actually do it. I can feel it, but the clothing is getting tight there. Kicking forward. Can't really kick backwards. That I'm not sure. I think that's the figure. It might be the clothing as well, but it feels more like the figure is restricted on that backwards kick. The knee, not quite to the butt. A little more than 90 there. I do see just moving around, his belt has come out, which is a little awkward. This belt I would say is too long. Wish that was trimmed down. You can always tuck it into his pants there or trim it yourself, but shouldn't have to do that. Wish that was a little better done. And then for our foot, no toe crunch, but you can kick up just a little bit, not much. Can go down a bit more, and then a little bit of a side-to-side rocker there. So overall, the articulation on him is pretty good. Again, the clothing looks very nicely done. Head looks nicely done. I would, again, prefer the shine line to be a bit more subtle, but overall, looks pretty nice on that. And now to compare the DASIN versus the one-shot toys. And right off the bat, we do see there is a noticeable size difference between the two, with the DASIN standing slightly taller. We'll see the impact of that in just a little bit when you compare to some of the other figure lines. We also see the one-shot toys does have a darker green uniform, more of a forest green, which I'd say is more real world, what you'd see out on the streets, versus the brighter green of the DASIN, which is more true to the anime. I also noticed when I was setting these up that the one-shot toys does not have any shoelaces on the feet, whereas the DASIN did. So the one-shot toys looks like he has more of a loafer versus a proper shoe, which not a huge deal because really the pant leg covers that part for the most part, so it's not super noticeable. You also see that the magnetic buttons for the jacket open the opposite way on the one-shot toys. And I'm not sure which is actually true to the anime in that regards, but it is a difference between the two. And the other big difference I'd say is the head sculpt. So we do have the big eyes on the one-shot toys and the bigger hair. The head overall is larger on the one-shot toys, just putting them side by side, which is interesting considering the body is smaller on the one-shot toys. And with these side by side, I'd actually say the head looks almost a little too small
on the DASIN. It'd actually probably look better in terms of sizing if the heads were swapped between the two. But the eyes, I think, really looking at them side by side like this, the eyes of the DASIN really went out. The one-shot are just too big when you see the alternative. Truthfully, when I had this before, I didn't think anything of it. I thought it looked good, but comparing against the DASIN, the face here definitely looks a lot better. Now, in terms of articulation, I remember this being tight, but I don't think it's really any more tight, the clothing, than what we had with the DASIN. So it feels, yeah, pretty much, it feels very similar. You can get a bit more on the knee kick there. Bicep swivel. I can't lean forward. Actually, I think you can just about. Yeah, the articulation seems fairly similar, and we do have the thigh swivel here, which didn't check if we had thigh swivel. We should on the DASIN, but I'll check in just a moment. It's probably going to fall over. Yeah, we do have the thigh swivel there. So articulation is pretty similar between the two. They all want to fall over now. There we go. Yeah, articulation is pretty similar between the two. So really the differences, I would say, are uniform color, the size, and then the head is the big difference. And we'll see how big of a factor size is when comparing to the other lines. The uniform color doesn't bother me that much. I think that one does look better on the DASIN, but it doesn't bother me that much. What I would say is the big distinction between the two is the head. So just looking at these again side by side, the head on the DASIN looks a lot better. Now I do want to do one final check just to see how the head swap compares, because as I mentioned, I feel the head on the DASIN almost looks too small. You just pop that on there. I don't know if it's actually going to fit. But yeah, just looking at the silhouette of that, I do think the size of the one-shot toy's head works much better on the DASIN. And let's see on the one-shot. I don't even know if that fits. Probably gonna have to move that down to fake it a little bit. Yeah, I think the heads really should be swapped in terms of sizing. It'd just be a bit more proportional, I think. Lastly, and I know I said that was the last thing, but I do want to check Pooh real fast to see how he compares, because the DASIN did have a much smaller Pooh versus the one-shot toys, which was much larger. See if I can get him some proper balance there. All right, so the Pooh for the DASIN, and actually put away Pooh for the one-shot. So let me grab that out. Don't mind the rustling. Put it away. Here we go. And the Pooh for the one-shot. And looking at the two, yeah, I do feel Pooh on DASIN is a little too small, but I also feel the Pooh on the one-shot is way too big. So it'd be nicer if there's a happy medium between the two. But ultimately, I think Pooh for DASIN wins, just because, again, the coloring of that looks better. And it's probably better to be slightly too small than overly large. And for our height, the DASIN Yusuke does stand just over 6 1/4, almost 6 1/2 inches tall. And the one-shot does stand just under 6 1/4 inches tall. So there's about a 1/4 inch height difference between the two figures here. And for our height comparisons, here we have the DASIN Yusuke with the DASIN Kurama and the one-shot toy Spirit Detective, aka Yusuke. And I will say the two DASIN models do scale very well together, whereas the one-shot toys Yusuke is a bit too short to work with the DASIN Kurama. Also, while having these figures together, I will say I like the shading of the hair on Kurama. So we do have the darker crown, the darker bangs, and then lighter there where the light would catch it, versus the very prominent light shine of the Yusuke. And the one shot doesn't really have anything, it's just a glossy plastic, and so it naturally catches light. So the Kurama I think is very well done, and I do wish again that the Yusuke was a bit more muted and more aligned with what they did with Kurama. Moving on with our size comparisons, here we have them next to the SH Figure Arts Saiyan Raised on Earth Goku and the SH Figure Arts Super Saiyan Full Power Goku. And here we have them next to the DASIN Genos from One Punch Man and the DASIN Homura Kenshin from Rurouni Kenshin. And here we have them next to the SH Figure Arts Gojo Satoru from Jujutsu Kaisen and the SH Figure Arts Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop. And here we have them next to the Black Series Fennec Shan from Star Wars and the Figma Made Levi from Attack on Titan. Overall, the DASIN Yusuke is a very good looking figure with just a handful of issues. For one, the pants are just a bit too tight. It's actually a little challenging to put him in this pose as the pants kept wanting to pull his legs back together, whereas the one-shot Yusuke has a looser crotch, making it easier to pose and articulate. Additionally, some of the accessories just feel a bit small. The size of Pooh, the size of the spirit gun effect, and even the size of his head. I do wish his head was just a little bit larger to fit that body a bit better. Also, the glossiness of his hands is a little unappealing, and I do wish the light shine on his hair was a little more subtle and not so prominent. But I'd have to say the biggest knock against this figure is just the scale. If you want to pair him with figures from other lines, he's probably going to be too large. So he's really exclusive to the DASIN universe and the DASIN line of figures. But honestly, the DASIN Yusuke looks great. When I first got the one-shot Yusuke, I really loved how it looked, but now that I have the two of them, the more that I look at the DASIN Yusuke, the more I'm loving that, and the less I'm loving the one-shot Yusuke. Not to mention the one-shot version is more difficult to find and he's more expensive, while the DASIN Yusuke is more readily available and much cheaper. So between the two, my money's on the DASIN Yusuke Urameshi.